So, yesterday I had a long flight. I've been standing or being on a treadmill every day, and I found that sitting for a long time really impacts my posture and how my body feels. And so what I'm going to do right now is some standing exercises that I am not certified to teach. My teacher, Andy Dale, at wuji.com, wuji.com, teaches this stuff. He's based in Seattle, so if anybody's actually interested in this, he's the person to go to. There are other people that teach it as well, but basically, when you do standing, you get to spend time exploring your body and finding points of tension. And it's very important in the internal Chinese martial arts for power generation, because your body basically, most of the time unconsciously we spend our time tense, and we have a lot of tension floating and lifting things up. In the internal arts, your power generation comes from the legs, and so as you learn to sink into your legs and set your hips, feel the tension or feel the gathering in your thighs. That coiling is what you use to issue power. So there's a lot of sinking, just called storing, and then driving back off the ground. So the strength of your legs is actually conveyed up through your legs, pushing off the floor, through the hips, through the spine, and then with your arms lowered and with good posture, there's a good connection there. So a lot of the power of internal arts is the things that we naturally do if we're pushing a car or pushing a refrigerator. When you go to push a car, you don't do this. You naturally sink into your legs and use your legs. It's not a really upper body thing. So anyways, standing is a way to check in and find all the places that are tense. As you let your body stand statically in resistance to gravity, you start to feel places that are tense, and you can feel them release. It's extraordinarily uncomfortable to do to start, and usually looks something like this. You've got your feet about shoulder width apart, slight bend to the knees. The idea is to bend your knees just low enough that you feel the tension taken up in your quads, and that should be in a comfortable place. And then arms out. Some people call this holding the ball, other people call it hugging the tree. But the basic idea is this is a good neutral stance. There are lots of other stances you can use that will isolate other areas, and you just stand. There's a guy named Bruce Kumar Francis who has a great book called Unlocking the Energy Gates of Your Body, which is just all about this stuff. And he talks about theory and applications of this. There's another gentleman in New Zealand who's a Chen Taiji practitioner who also does another style called Ichuan. And he has a great essay on this stuff where he basically says that standing is kind of like an open secret in the martial arts. Some people say you should do this for an hour a day. One young Tai Chi master that I knew was like an hour a day, every day. It's like brushing your teeth. It's just something you have to do. But it's something that consistently the top masters in the internal styles do regularly. And so the basic idea is you take this stance, and as you sit here and just let gravity work on you, it becomes uncomfortable. And for people who are just starting this, it can become really agonizing. Like, most people can't do this for 10 minutes. And what that discomfort is areas of tension, knots, if you want, in your body. The same kind of things that like a deep tissue masseuse would try to work through, that are basically fighting gravity. And clenching. And what happens is those areas basically get exhausted, and then they release and relax. And one of the things that Andy said is that the levels are basically fire and ice, and then I think it was spirit or something after that. Unfortunately, I can't remember what it was exactly, but the actually ice and then fire. So you've got all these areas that are locked up, and that's the ice, and then as they start to be exhausted, you go through the fire, which really hurts, and then eventually it relaxes. But one of the things that you have to learn doing this is to become aware of what's going on in your body. So like for me, all along my right shoulder blade and my right tricep, those are all tense and locked up, which is why I'm doing this today, because it's pretty uncomfortable. And kind of one of the more double-edged aspects of this is that as you get better at it and as things start to relax more, when they tense up again, it's really uncomfortable. It's like you've trucked around like this for 20 years, never had a problem with it. And then once they start to loosen up and you know what it feels like to be loose again, once it starts to tense up again, it's pretty intolerable. So what I'm doing while I'm chattering away here is actually feeling the areas that are tense and trying to slightly alter my position, so I'm kind of like leaning into those places where they're tense and then letting them relax. So one thing I'm a big proponent of is standing desks, and if you're working at a standing desk, actually you can do this naturally while you're there. Okay, now, oh man, I can feel it very, very strongly in the tendons around the ankle of my right ankle, and I'm just gonna let it out, let it relax, and there, it just got loose. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this is that standing sounds boring as hell, but as you do it more, it's kind of seductive. It feels good. It's very common to get really captured in the idea of exploring this inner space as you feel these different areas kind of cry out for help and address them. My right glute now goes tense. Awesome. And so my right shoulder is chronic, and so that's something I try to work through pretty regularly. And actually, one of the disadvantages of being at a treadmill desk is that there's so much activity going on with the walking and stuff that it's really hard to do this kind of isolation. So right now my focus is on burning off calories, so I'm not going to go at the treadmill desk anytime soon. But later on, I might mix things up a little bit and either do just turn the treadmill off and do standing for part of the day at my desk, or do days where all I do is stand. Okay, now I can feel tension right here along the top part of the knee. Oh, my shoulder just popped. Another thing that's interesting is some areas that are just going to drive you crazy, where they just really, really, really feel tense. And sometimes focusing on them is the wrong thing to do. It's kind of like Michael Lopp, Rands in Repose, talks about the soak, the active and passive soak when you're problem solving. Sometimes the area of tension is something you're just not going to get to directly. So when you focus on some other part, suddenly that part releases on its own. So I was doing Tai Chi in the park one time. It's a pretty common thing for people to do Tai Chi. And this dad and his son, who was probably about 4, came by while I was doing it. And the little kid was like, "Daddy, what's he doing?" And the dad said, "Well, he's doing Tai Chi." And he says, "What's that?" And he says, "Well, it helps you relax." And it was interesting because I hadn't really thought about it in that context for a while. For me, it's a fighting style, it's an art, and one of the things that I was realizing was is like, it's not that it helps you relax, it's that you start to realize that if you can't relax, you can't do the techniques as well. As I said, the expansion and the contraction is where a lot of the power comes from. And when you have blockages and that kind of thing, it inhibits your ability to actually come to a fully relaxed place. And then there's other things as well, like when you're doing yielding exercises and that kind of thing. Oh, my trunk is actually really tight. That's nice to know. That relaxation helps you deal with something that's coming in and then really blast it back out again. It's not that it helps you relax, that's like a byproduct of it. Like you reach the point where you kind of naturally are fighting to learn to relax so that you can do the techniques right. And the other thing about Tai Chi, the reason it's done so slowly, it almost ties into the standing meditation aspects of it, is that as you're doing it, you start to feel areas where you're tense and it's keeping you from doing it right, and so what ends up happening is you end up really slowing down the clock, feeling the weight dropping in this leg, feeling things coming together, and your attention to detail just increases, transferring weight to this leg, and butt sticking out, which isn't good. So I've got to relax my ankle enough that my leg can be in this position, and my hips can be straight. So that's another thing, is when you're actually doing this stuff, tailbone should be tucked, almost like you're standing against a wall. And so if you're sticking your butt out, that's a block. So when you're doing your power, that stuff gets isolated there. You need to sink so you have a connection to your spine. So if you're doing a shoulder strike or something like that, I sink into this leg and I drive off, and all that power is conveyed straight up the spine over to here. So anyways, I'm probably going to do this for at least 40 minutes if I can get the time before I'm supposed to meet everybody else for a meeting, and work on listening this and this and back here. Another thing that I've learned from 16 years of sitting at a desk is that when you're sitting at a desk, it's a tendency to hunch over here. And so everything in through here gets really, really tight. And as I've been exploring that, I've been realizing that that has an impact on everything in the back. And so the back gets really uncomfortable, and I was like going to my chiropractor and I'm like, this really, really hurts. They were working with me, and they were also pointing out that this stuff was really tight in through here, particularly like right along the collarbone, a lot of knots there. And up here, up and through the throat, and then over the shoulder. And what I found is, as those relax, they stop basically pulling the back in, and then suddenly things in the back start to loosen up. When I'm standing at a desk, I have a tendency to do Santi, which is a position from Xingyi Chuan, another internal art. This is their basic standing meditation stance and ready stance. In terms of martial applications, I'm coiling into this leg, sinking onto it so I can drive forward. You can look at grabbing somebody, like right here, pulling them into you as you drive forward. But as a standing set, it's really good. And so before I got my treadmill desk, I was spending a lot of time not doing this with the hands, but getting in the stance with the legs and then typing, keeping the desk at a level where I could keep my hands fairly low. And so this has me basically loading up this leg, loading up the quads, feeling all the tendons in my ankle go, hey, this is really tight, and relaxing. And then I would just do that kind of as long as I could, and then switch sides. And same thing, tailbone tucked. It should almost feel like you're sitting on a bar stool when you do this, and my weight's totally on my back foot, so if I needed to, I could pop kick off or something. And then if you're actually doing, Santi means Trinity. If you're actually doing the Santi position, the full one, this hand here should feel like it's got extension in it. So it should feel almost like you're pushing a beach ball under the water. This arm should have enough of a bend in it that you can actually set like a ball bearing in this part of your arm. And then basically the toes of the front feet, fingers of the front hand, and your nose should basically be in alignment. And so this is a really good one for isolating that side of my shoulder that's bothering me. So I can hold that. One of the things that Andy has told me is that the fingers should be reaching out, almost like you're thinking of like the finger bones growing. So there's a bit of extension. You're not tight, and you're also not so relaxed that you collapse. Like if somebody came up to you and started pushing, you should be able to extend your arm almost like you're pushing it through the sleeves of your coat. Keep some nice extension there, and if somebody actually put their chest up against there and pushed, that force would go through your arm, down your spine, into your foot, and you're using your foot to actually brace against that person. You've got a really good connection. So this is how you see like the Taiji masters that are standing there like this with like 10 guys on the other side all pushing it, and they're just taking it and not moving. And the reason is because they're just being a conduit between the ground. They're directing the force of those 10 guys into the floor. And as long as their structure can hold up, they're not using their strength, they're using their bones, then they can just stand there and let the ground push back. So anyways, that's